Men go mad.
He's gone mad.
Mad Men.
You're mad.
The man's mad.
Mad Men.
I'm mad.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the Mad Men Pod. It's been a crazy week, man. Lots of going on. Your Mavs officially did not qualify. America is out or close to being out of the Cricket World Cup, and India's still kicking butt over there. And there's lots of interesting things happening in the world. A lot, politics and finance, and it's just been an interesting couple weeks to hear what's going on.
We're finally starting to hear from the presidential candidates too. It felt like, when are they going to actually start campaigning? And you just talked about how you told me before we started, but like Donald Trump went on the All In pod. You had Joe Biden freeze up like 3 times this week, which is, usually the news would only show us 3 times a month. So interesting times, man. Like we got some pretty exciting presidential race, the geriatric race, as I should call it.
Shout out to All In Pod. Like, having President Trump on the podcast, or any podcast in general, like, that is a big deal to give that much exposure. Like, they've had, before candidates on as well, but, for the world of podcasts that we are in, that's a big accomplishment to give that much recognition and that much credibility to podcast. I think that's a great thing. But today we're going to talk through trends and a few things. As you can tell, Samir is out this week, and we're going to miss him because his data points are always on point, but we'll try to do our best. So you want to get into it, Adil? Starting off, man, have you seen those dirty shoes that people pay outrageous prices for? Like $600 for a pair of shoes?
Yeah.
They're going IPO. Well, I guess they were going IPO, but just like a dirty idea, they fell short. Well, Golden Goose was scheduled to go IPO this week in Milan, but since they've postponed their offering, referencing concerns with European elections. Look, it's true that Shoemaker has been increasing revenue like crazy. They had about a $2 billion valuation that they were seeking out of this, with over great year-over-year growth. But come on, does a luxury shoemaker really need to go public? Last time that happened, surprisingly enough, with the same company, was like Doc Martin, and Doc Martin didn't do so well. At the same time, luxury markets are down, and Gucci said that their first quarter sales were down 18%, while LVMH said they were down 18% year over year. What do you think, Adil? Do you think Golden Goose should even go public in the future? What do you think of the brand and what it would do to the brand as it grows?
You can't really talk about what's happening here without talking about Supreme. So Supreme was also kind of a kitschy brand with just stamping Supreme on everything, and they went the private equity route, and private equity totally flopped on that. They overpaid for it. So I think Golden Goose probably realized, like, if they want a big payday, the owners there, they may need to go the IPO route and sell to the masses. So Golden Goose is still beloved. I don't get it. Like, I bought my wife a pair one time and she didn't like the style I picked. And then we went back to go return them, and they said, sorry, we don't know if you've used these or not because they're already dirty. So it's like, it's hilarious that's literally their reasoning. They're like, we don't know if you actually use these already, so we can't take returns, but we'll give you store credit. I was like, we just bought it like 3 days ago. Anyway, so she likes her Golden Gooses. That she it adds a little pizzazz to them. I'm in the fashion industry. I see a lot of my customers wear them, but it's still beloved. Like, and I thought it was just going to be a fad for a little bit, but they came out. I think like they started getting popular, I want to say about 5 or 6 years ago, where I saw a lot of my customers, a lot of my staff, everyone wearing them. You still see people going and running to the store to get the newest pair, and their limited release model is, I think, what keeps them really hyped up. They haven't gone mass market, and so they're probably trying to do what Vera Bradley did. Vera Bradley had a similar IPO experience where they took that popularity and then went IPO, raised a bunch of money, a lot of the execs sold, and then the IPO tanked. Their stock price tanked. So there may be a little bit of this going on in the background, but canceling their IPO is interesting because I don't know why. Like, maybe there's some other opportunity on the table or something out there. I really can't tell what's their reasoning for that.
Yeah, they talked about how, like, the French Parliament is being restructured, and Our European Parliament is being restructured, and there's a lot of elections going on right now. So I think that's what their original thing was. I think there was an investor call right before this happened, and the guy was like, "WTF? Like, really? What's going on? What's wrong with you guys?" But I mean, my question becomes is like, it's one product. It's just a shoe. Like, I don't know how much clothes they really sell, like shirts and pants and all. I mean, I know they have one because I've seen them, but my assumption still, and at least from my understanding of the research, is that very much is that it's still 90-95% just shoes. And I don't know how you can scale a brand that much to a $2 billion valuation on just shoes that are clearly overpriced, and that at some point they're going to have to, every luxury brand has adjusted, right? It says, hey, look, we sell clothes, we sell shoes, we sell handbags. It's a mix of things, and they're going to have to evolve, and maybe that's what will happen when they go to capital markets.
All right, I got a cool story for you. Social media influencers are broke. So what happened to the days where everyone wanted to be an influencer? It felt so easy. Everyone was just getting these easy paydays. And it always felt like every influencer out there was just banking. Like they're wearing the best designer stuff. They are living in the nicest places. They're going on the best vacations. And it was a very desirable lifestyle. Well, Wall Street Journal did a whole study on this. And as an influencer, it's harder than ever to make a living on just solely being an influencer. So there's a famous streamer, Clint Brantley. He came forward about what he makes in a year. He has over 400,000 followers across TikTok, YouTube, and Twitch. That's quite a bit. I mean, it's quite a following, and he's doing this full time. Well, he came clean on what he made last year, and it was less than the median salary in the US. Less than $58,000 he made all of last year. And he was doing this full time. So last year, there's also some other stats that came out that 48% of creator earners made 15,000 or less, and 13% only 13% made over $100,000. So this is a really interesting discussion because more and more the value of influencers, as a brand owner, I've started to not really care about that anymore. I mean, influencers are great, but like I'm much more fascinated with user generated content and asking for that, soliciting for that now. The desire to pay for an influencer is not there for me anymore. So what do we think? Like, is the influencer economy dead, or like where is it still effective? What do you think?
Look, I think you bring up a good point, because what's happening in this influencer market is, there's too many of them, right? There's so many, pick any Tom, Dick, and Harry, they're there. And the idea that, if a brand, and you can use yours as an example, right? And say, hey, look, if one guy feels like he's too expensive, I can just go to another one. Like, there's so many options now, right? And it's just supply and demand, right? There's so much supply that the price is going to bring down the evaluation of that supply, and it's going to bring it down, right? So I think that's currently what's happening in this, influencer economy, and I think you're going to see a lot more of that. I think there's a certain guys that have already built their brands, and the ones that have built their brands are very valuable, and the ones that have the millions of followings and stuff like that. I think one of those stories that we talked about earlier that was Jake Paul, right? Jake Paul, technically YouTuber, influencer type person. He's building his own stuff, right? And utilizing his own brand as he himself as a brand influencer and utilizing his own product. And I think that is something that could still work if they have the following. But if you're looking at other people to sponsor you and be able to give you stuff and go on these awesome trips and stuff, I think you're gonna find out that you've got to have some sort of X factor in there, and there's too many of them in this economy that they can do this. And now with other tools out there, it's just going to be harder for these guys. So I think it's going to be a struggle for these guys. They're going to start looking for their day job and just do this as a passion project. It's a lot of work, man. I can't do it. All right. When's the last time you've been on United Airlines, Adil?
Like never. I don't even remember.
Hi. Well, I feel like I'm a loyalist and I've been on United Airlines, but man, I'm gonna be targeted, and I'm gonna make these guys some money now. The latest news from United Airlines is they just launched a game-changing shift in advertising strategy called Kinetic Media by United Airlines, and it's basically a new platform promising brands ability to access a captive audience. If you've seen the new United Airlines planes, they've got a screen in each one of them. The app is very intuitive. They've got this the app is awesome. Like, I can go in. They'll tell me whichever airport I'm at, how to get in, how to internalize. But now they're going to use that. They have one of the largest loyalty programs in the U.S. and they're basically being able to say, hey, look, you can target these guys. We've got all the data on these guys, and utilizing it basically like a Google search campaign and saying, hey, look, we'll just let you target them at 30,000 feet. But what do you feel like? How do you feel about United Airlines being able to let you market to them and be able to sell ads against you as the user?
So other than like where you're flying and what you're doing with with United Airlines, what else do they know about you? I mean, what other information are they gathering from you? Of course, your age, your gender, this and that, but like, what are they going to target, and how is this going to be that much more custom? Do you think they're going to start asking to build out more profiling? Like, what are your interests? Where do you like to travel to, and things like that?
I think I think there's going to be certain things that you're going to be able to. Look, data's in king, right? And now, if I can get age and gender at minimum, and then you've got children, you don't have children, like you got profiles already set up in your app, right? And are you a frequent traveler? Are you not a frequent traveler? I think there's campaigns that can be built around just those basic facts. Companies, travel gear or clothing companies, or even hotel brands, right? I think these are great avenues for and those are big markets. Drink brands and figuring out, hey, look, can you, should we be serving, instead of Coca-Cola, should we be serving something else, right? Prime soda or something, Prime drinks or Papa Olopo or whatever it's called. I think it's on the United Airlines side, it's great. I think from their perspective of this is like, hey, look, we've got the data. Let's go capitalize it and increase earnings by utilizing that ad service that nobody has access to. Look, I think owning the ad network, is that going to cause some legal battles? Maybe. But also the idea that you've got the data, go capitalize it. And as a user, look, I get ads served to me, so it doesn't really matter. I'm so immune to it now. But hey, if they get me to click to buy or something, maybe I might reconsider. But yeah,
it's I mean, speaking of ads, I got a pretty cool story here. So, your favorite creators are going AI and they're becoming AI avatars. So what's really cool here is TikTok is actually starting a partnership with lots of TikTok creators to create these AI generated avatars. And so Charlie D'Amelio and whatnot, whatever your favorite creator, whoever your favorite creator is, you will now start seeing ads that are AI generated versions of Charlie D'Amelio and of whoever, right? And what's really interesting about this is that this is going to open the door for a whole new world. So now that we're going to be sold by something or by someone that doesn't actually exist. What's really interesting is some of the creators have kind of slammed TikTok for this. So famous creator Tinks said that AI starting this partnership sucks and AI sucks. I mean, not the most insightful take on it, but what's really interesting is that TikTok took a lot of that backlash and they've created the special counsel and advisory board with other creators to provide, quote, critical feedback. So what's really interesting about this, TikTok is saying that this is actually going to add more of a human touch. I don't know how that makes sense at all, but this seems to be opening a door for a whole new way of advertising. Like creators are now going to literally brands will literally license the likeness of a creator to generate their own content. And once they pay that flat fee of licensing or whatever fee, like royalty fee they set up, they can now just generate and have them say and do whatever they want. It's what do you think about this? Like, where are we headed as a society if this is going to become the norm?
Man, what comes to me first is like these celebrities. Like, forget the TikTokers. That's just a starting point. But if you start looking at this and saying, hey, look, Ryan Reynolds is going to have an avatar that he can go license out. Can you imagine what the cost would be, and then ability to go say, hey, look, I got Ryan Reynolds to promote my product. That's going to pay out way much forward. But then also you're looking at like, hey, what is the legal grounds of this stuff? Like, what is like the creator or the creator, right? Like, what is the point? But you've created this persona. It's very much going back to like Grimes and her audio, right? Grimes at one point said, hey, look, you can use my audio for AI and build your own sound as long as I get a 10% of the revenue generated on it. I don't care if you use my voice, right? So, from a creative standpoint, look, if you can build the personas, and we talked about earlier, the influencers, and saying, hey, look, they're going to go downhill, but hey, look, if I can make a penny for every extra person that uses my name, great. However, now I can't control what they say. And that's what's concerning. Is like, hey, look, can I go get, again, back to Ryan Reynolds. Ryan Reynolds has a good image, right? Can I get Ryan Reynolds to say something funky and say, hey, look, I licensed it. Do I really want to promote, X, Y product? I don't know. Like, it seems like a very gray area. And being able to do this with AI, it seems just like, hey, look, are we pushing the envelope too fast or too quickly? And again, regulations aren't there. There's no regulations on AI yet, and they're not good ones that are being proposed. And the guys that are proposing them aren't doing good jobs. I mean, it's just a weird space right now with AI and anything else that's very tech heavy. This could go really wrong really fast.
I agree. And I think more than wrong, like I've talked about this so many times, but I remember when the metaverse was being pushed on us, there was this real belief that this is what's going to become the norm, and people pushed back against it. Do you guys remember when 3D goggles or 3D TVs were, everyone said that was going to become the norm and everyone was going to do that? Do you guys remember when, there's so many technologies out there that we said, oh, this is the new norm. This is how everything's going to be moving forward. And it just didn't stick. And it almost makes me wonder is like, even if they say that, even if they don't badge the content with this is AI generated and they actually try to sell it as this is the real person talking, eventually we're just going to become so numb to all of this advertising. It's honestly going to make it a lot harder on the platform to sell ads, because they're going to realize like, wait, this is not creating the clicks, and then the brands are not paying for this content anymore. And so where are we standing? And so I truly believe the human nature in all of us will kind of revolt against this, and not revolt in apathy, right? Like we will just not care about all of these things, and we'll just be like, whatever, like I'll buy what I buy and I'll just ignore most of this content. So I don't know, man. I think there's just going to be it's just not going to stick.
And I agree with you. There's going to be a fatigue, and it's happening now, right? It's happening now, and there's, I did a masterclass the other day with Forbes, and we talked about the funnel and how that's died, and how marketers have changed, and how people have changed, and the data shows that, right? So it shows that, like, there's a Harvard Business Review that shows that 80% of customers already know who they're going to buy from before they even start buying, because they're so used to a brand, right? So you trying to market to them during the research process, you're going to lose out, A, and then B is that 90% of those 80% of people are going to buy from day one people. Like, they're already going to know who they're going to buy from, right? So if you have a major impressions and you're trying to make an impression on certain things, I think you got to be, as a brand, I think you got to hyper focus and say, hey, look, let's stick in this lane. Let's become this, right? Let's become the beer of the beach, right? When I say beer of the beach, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's Corona, right? Like, it's that idea, like, you have to become one symbol and make sure that it's just superimposed on people so that they're not thinking otherwise. So let me take you into another one, right? And very much in that same idea of, hey, what happens when you double down, right? And actually, I'm going to take the opposite, right? So let's look at like virtual reality, or megahertz refresh rates, or optical finger reader, or screen glass, or IP68, or hole punch cutout. These are all common words by tech companies and cell phone manufacturers, besides one, Apple. These are all words Apple has refused to say on stage and has gone out of the way to not say on stage, or in main cases, right? And the latest one on this list is artificial intelligence. And don't tell me that they say that on stage. No, they didn't. They basically called it Apple Intelligence, rebranding it to their own version of AI. And what do you think, Adil? Like, is this creative marketing, or is it like intentional? And I've got my own thoughts on this, but I want to hear yours first on like why you think Apple goes this way to not use common words like metaverse that was active, right? You kind of see that in their product. Virtual reality, you see it in the product. Clearly, artificial intelligence, you see it in their products, but they're not going to say it.
It's so tough for me to have an opinion on this, because I really don't know what's Apple's take. Like, what are they trying to achieve by not using artificial in their nomenclature? I mean, I get it. They're trying to build new ownership of something new, right? So while everyone is chasing artificial intelligence, and they're like, that seems to be the space race right now, They're saying, no, we're going to create our own race and only we can compete and only we win. Right. So that's how that's the only way I can really explain it, is that's probably why they're doing this. A video resurfaced this week on my feed where Steve Jobs was talking about how did the term podcast come up with, or like how did, like, where did the term podcast come from? You know, and here we are talking on one, but he said, oh, it's combining iPod and casting together, right? And you're basically creating your own radio station. It's not iPod, it's pod as in like a gathering or something that people go to, but he wanted to push the name iPod is the reason why podcasting hit. It's like he did that years ago, and now you see that same playbook happening with Apple Intelligence. He's intentional. They are intentionally not using artificial intelligence because then you're going to be compared to others. So that it's kind of genius, like how they're doing it. Like, are they really going to take away business away from like Gemini or anything? Like, it is all about the infrastructure they provide on their devices for this all to work. So, I just got a push notification to download the beta version of iOS 18. I think some of those features are in that, right?
Yeah. And I agree. Like, I think you're right on, right? I think the idea here is that they want to, of course, control the narrative, but then avoid comparison, right? So people can't say, oh, hey, I have the best version of AI or artificial intelligence. Well, I have Apple Intelligence, so there's nowhere to compare, right? Going back to my, our original conversations, right? Like, I have the highest refresh rate. Nobody cares because I'm never comparing my refresh rates. I'm only comparing it to my own version of my own refresh rates, right? Whatever it's called. I forgot what their name is. And they've got a whole list. Like, if you go to Apple Trademark, and they have a whole list of just stuff that they've come up with that's just like their own version of stuff. It's just insane. Like, it's hundreds of lanes of stuff that is, right? Like, they call the hole punch cutout, call it like their island or whatever they called it, right? Like, it's crazy to see these guys do these things, which is really smart and from a marketing standpoint, because they can say this is the best version that's ever been made. That's why they have these random charts if you ever see the presentation with just an arrow, because who are they comparing to? They're just comparing to themselves, right? 10% better than the other, right? But it's genius in the way of not taking the industry words. And the best version of this is Metaverse, right? Like, when Metaverse shit the bed, they were never related to it. They have Apple Vision. It's technically the same thing, right? And you've seen Mark Zuckerberg get on and say, hey, look, he was on the Morning Brew podcast and he talked about, hey, look, this is the same thing we've been doing forever. But the point that he doubled down on the idea of Metaverse and called it Meta and rebranded his name and everything else. And when Metaverse shit the bed, nobody compared it to Apple. Apple Vision's still there. Vision OS is still there. It's still kicking butt. So it's just, I got to give them credit when their credit due. I am a fanboy, but I mean, this is how you do business, is you create your own lane.
Yeah, it's you do create your own lane. Speaking of creating your own lane, Gen Z is building serious wealth through sneakers. Okay, so forget the traditional 401k and the 60-40 portfolio that our parents always told us to invest in. Gen Z is interested in investing in collectibles. So according to a new survey by Bank of America, roughly 94% of Gen Z and millennial investors are interested in collecting items such as watches, rare cars, and sneakers to build their wealth. Makes you wonder why this is happening, right? So if you see someone flip a pair of sneakers on Twitch or the Whatnot app, you think that's a great way to build wealth. It's exciting. You get a social appeal from it. You get that dopamine hit. I guess like it's a seismic shift, right? Like this is younger Americans get all their financial news from social media through TikToks and Reels and whatnot. But our parents got everything from traditional news outlets who favored Wall Street and these portfolios. So should Wall Street be worried about the next generation? Like, is this going to be something that people just kind of become apathetic to, and the amount of people building wealth on Wall Street will just saturate? Like, are they going to go to other means? What do you think?
Look, these collectible ideas. I don't know if there's a show now, right, on Netflix called The Collectible King or something like that, where they talk about collectibles and all this stuff. Like, it's wealth is wealth, money is money, and the cash is king. Is my scenario. Like, having cash and having bonds and ability to growth is always going to be better and more stable because there's so many guidelines and so many boxes to be checked to get it right. Right. When you look at something like, let's talk about shoes, like the shoe hype, right? Shoe hype and buying these rare shoes and keeping them crescent, they're all dropping value. You can go look at the best shoe now, and yeah, there's like 5 or 10 that stay there, and they'll continue to stay there. You got the Hermes Birkin bags that have the same concept. But watch was a scenario where watch were peaking. You couldn't get a Rolex if your life depended on it, and then if you were paying 10x prices. That has fallen. There's just no control over that, right? So the problem is that, hey, one thing that's worth 100,000 today can be worth 10,000 tomorrow. You'll never know until you go and try to sell it. And when is the right time to sell, right? While at least you have, if it's stocks and bonds, you have market data. You've got influence on the data and how that's moving around, right? Like Nvidia is up 100,000%, whatever the crazy number is, and you've seen the trend. You've seen it other else, right? So is it going to bust? Is it not going to bust? Who knows? But you've got to eventually. You've got some opportunities and some logic to look at revenues and support it. These things have just no rhyme or reason. So it's just really much like, hey, I think it's a collectible. I think it's valuable. Let me go get it.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is a little childish, right? Like that probably does play into why, like at some point, a lot of these guys will learn some tough lessons. I remember how I thought as a, college kid, and I would think that, I can easily you're telling me I can just put like chips into a computer and sell like a CPU tower, right? And like that was the actual thing me and my friends talked about. But then you start thinking about, how much inventory you need to carry in this. You learn some tough lessons in that. So doing collectibles, while I constantly get told by some of the younger guys, like, you can make so much money on Rolex and this and that. Like they're all into it. But it's so short-sighted, and they're eventually gonna get stuck with, have like $10,000-$20,000 stuck for whatever reason, and then they'll realize like, nope, this is probably not the best way to make some money. There was like, I think the consensus is a lot of billionaires across the board saying don't ever take the beauty of compound interest. like you have to recognize that beauty. Like, put money in a place where it compounds and just leave it and go, right? Like contribute a little bit every month to it, and then you just got to forget about it. So that's, what was it, the 8th wonder of the world? 7th? How many wonders of the world are there now?
There's 8 now. I don't know. I could be wrong.
Okay. Well, the 9th wonder of the world that, Warren Buffett said is compound interest. So I think some of these lessons are learned the hard way. But this is kind of a silly, it's one of those clickbaity surveys that I think Bank of America did. But it is still interesting how much money is going into collectibles, because there's whole platforms built around it now.
My last take on that understatement is I've seen people build 6-7 figure businesses. 6-7 figure businesses off these like resale markets, right? And they only are valuable through the guys that have ultra wealth. Like the guy that can't wait for that sneaker in line, the guy that can't wait at the Rolex dealership or the AP dealership to go buy this watch because he just wants it, right? That's where that money is going, and that's who that buyer is. And again, how do they get their money, right? It's not because they're holding on to this wealth of content, right? So I think, our wealth of products and collectibles, they just want it. That's why they have the money, and that's why that business is there, right? So I think people need to keep that reality check in mind, that the money that's floating in that business is still ultra wealthy, and they didn't make their money on collectibles. Well,
yeah,
art, maybe art.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. Like, I mean, the wealthy of the past did art, right? And now it's like these one-off releases from Nike and Travis Scott collection and this and that people want to get. So, oh man. Poor Travis Scott got arrested, by the way. Did you see that?
Travis Scott got arrested. Justin Timberlake's been arrested this recently. But then Dr. Dre and Kendrick Lamar, come on. LA, what's up, guys? That was dope.
Nuts. That was nuts.
That was dope.
I can't believe he performed that Drake diss live. That was crazy.
Oh, man. LA needed that.
Yeah. All right. Anything else? Are we gonna call it?
We can call it. I got a few stories if you want. We can talk about Jake Paul launches W. We can talk about LVMH and the Orient Express, Chipotle Boys, or we can just call it a day, man.
I think, yeah, let's call it a day. I like that you said the headline, so tune in next week. Stay fabulous,
set this
guys.
up. All right, ciao.
Men go mad.
He's gone mad.
Mad Men.
You're mad.
The man's mad.
Mad Men.
I'm mad.